Joanna DeVoe, and this is the very first episode of Every Which Way, a new interview series that I'm doing featuring women who kick ass. And the first woman that I interviewed for this series is Erika Lyremark, the personification of kick ass. She is the powerful creatrix behind dailywhip.com, The Morning Whip, Hustle Your Biz Boot Camp, and the writer of one of my favorite business books, Revenue, Results, and Red Carpet Dreams. She's been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, and now the oh-so-prestigious KickAssWitch.com! Every which way! Putting the K in magic. And I just have to get honest with you guys because you are going to see in a minute the catastrophe that this interview was. The content is fabulous. Erika had so many great things to say, and I'm happy to say that I captured it all, but it was definitely a challenge. I told you that my computer was making a frog croaking noise. So the week of the interview, I went and took an old laptop to Apple to have it fixed. They fixed the problem. I bought the recording equipment I needed to record Skype interviews, and I practiced the whole day and night before interviewing myself. I set each laptop up in a different room and then went back and forth and recorded it and made sure everything was running smoothly. But the morning of the interview, for some reason, the screen kept freezing and I had to keep restarting my computer, and the third time that it happened, I was like, maybe we should reschedule, Erika. And she was like, well, next week is no good for me because I'm right in the middle of the morning whip. And I didn't want to let her go. I really couldn't let this opportunity pass me by. So I was like, okay, let me shut everything down one more time and then we'll try this again. And she's like, okay. She was very nice about it, but this woman is no nonsense, and I was just sweating and shaking and feeling so nervous, so I just shut that computer down, went and got the frog croaking computer, opened it up, and I didn't think I'd have time to buy the program, but I knew they offered a 7-day free trial. So I downloaded that really quick, everything went up really fast, and lo and behold, it worked! I was so happy. It only took a matter of minutes, and I had us both up on Skype, and we did the interview. I was a little rattled to begin with, and it was making that frog croaking noise, although she asked me if it was a cat. She's like, do you have a cat? Sounds like there's a cat purring. I was like, yeah, no, that's my computer. Anyway, we did the interview. It was excellent. I was thrilled to have it done. Like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, afterwards she did a little whip session with me about money, and something in that pushed a button in me and made me start crying. And then once I start crying, I kind of can't stop. So I was really embarrassed, but I kind of pushed through our little whip session. And then when it was over, I just cried. I like bawled my head off for at least 30 minutes. And I finally pulled it together. And then I went to go look at the footage and make sure everything was okay. And that's when I saw that because I downloaded the free trial, instead of rebuying the recording program, the interview has a ginormous video recording demo sign right through the bottom center, which cuts Erika off at the chin, and for part of it gives her a very cartoonish looking mustache. And when I saw this, I was like so cried out. All I could do was laugh, and not like ha. It was like that crazy hysterical laughter when everything has gone wrong and you just think it can't get any worse, and then it gets worse. It was like ha 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 ha. Woo! To look at it for a few days, and I finally came to the conclusion that I would make the video just audio with a still picture over it. But this woman is so hot and she looks like $1,000,000. She's got these great big blue eyes that are so expressive. I went back in today and was like, what can I do to kind of salvage this video? So I ended up cropping it up to the corners so you will be able to see Erika and my forehead. There will be a tiny little forehead in the bottom of the screen. It's a very nice forehead, don't you think? It's a big forehead. So all you're going to see is my blonde forehead bobbing up and down in the corner, but I think it's worth humiliating myself a little bit to show you guys what a dynamic, interesting woman Erika is. You are going to be missing part of her chin, I'm sorry to say, but I still think it's worth it to get to see her in action. I hope you enjoy it, guys, and with no further ado, here's Erika Lyremark. Hi, Erika.
Hello.
Welcome to Every Which Way.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you're helping me kick off this interview series because, well, you kick ass, and that is the name of my company, Kick-Ass Switch, putting the K in magic, and this interview series is all about trying to inspire other women by sharing our stories, your story today, and I don't know, I think you just personify what it is to really be yourself and make your own magic, which you have done with your company, The Daily Whip. Can you tell us all a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Yeah. Do you want me to start at the beginning? Like, are you looking for...
I think it's very interesting that you were an exotic dancer for almost a decade and that now you own your own coaching practice. So I would love to hear about how you made that leap.
That leap. Okay. Well, it wasn't a short leap. Let's just get that out of the way. It's been a very, very long process. So I'll do this as quickly as I possibly can. But the gist is that I was living in Seattle during the 1990s, and I was thinking about ways that I could fund my college education, and that's like another story just around that. And I do have a book coming out called Think Like a Stripper: How to Hustle Like You Mean It.
Can't wait.
And I do go into that a little bit in the beginning of that book, but the gist is, money for college. I had a lot of friends who were already strippers, and they were, smart and pale and, had dark hair. I was very kind of like alternative goth industrial girl at that time. And, I've always been attracted to things that I'm not supposed to be attracted to. I grew up in a very conservative family, and I've always been very much of a rebel. And not a rebel like I just want to rebel just to rebel, but I really just want to do my own thing. Like, that was what was so important to me, and that was a lot of what I didn't get to have growing up. And so I started thinking about becoming a stripper, and it actually took me a year from the time I started thinking about it to actually doing it.
And you were a kid, right? You were like 19?
Let's see how old I was 21 when I started dancing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, but I moved out to Seattle when I was 19.
Okay.
But by the time that the whole process started, and so there's a school that I wanted to go to, and it's an apparel design program. And it was a really tough school. And I knew that I needed a lot of time and I needed a lot of cash to get me through it. So I started thinking like, how can I fund this? And then while I was waiting for my residency in the state of Washington so I could get state fees and not pay out of state, this plan started to formulate. So I did some amateur contests. I worked in a peep show and decided to make the big leap and do it full time. And that started my 9-year career path. And I never thought that I would do it for 9 years. And by the time I quit, what had turned out to be a stepping stone for myself had become a very tight leash. And I think this can happen in a lot of careers, is that people outgrow themselves in their career. It's no longer exciting. It's no longer challenging. And I actually started to burn out about year 4 and 5. And I was ready to quit. And
wow, you went another 4 years after that.
Yeah, and that's one of my strengths is that I'm very tough. But that's one of my weaknesses too, is being very tough. Mm-hmm. So, and because I kept going to school, I really lacked career focus because people are so blessed right now because there's so many coaches out there that are more than, it's not just career coaches that take these assessment tests. That was available back in the 90s, take an assessment test. And so I'd look at these tests and I'd say, I don't fit into any of these categories. What am I going to do with myself? And I remember my therapist at the time, she would say to me, don't feel bad, Erika. When I look at the want ads, I know that I would only qualify to be a cashier at a grocery store. So don't feel bad. It doesn't mean a thing. And I didn't have any business experience per se, like working in an office. What I did have in large quantity was I had guts, I had courage, and I had confidence, even though I had confidence in me, even though the last 5 years of my dancing career, it wasn't good for my self-esteem. But once I got out of that environment, I really started to rebuild my confidence.
Well, can I ask you about that for a second? Can I stop you?
Of course.
One of the things that attracted me to you is there's just no shame in your game. And I wanted to know if that was something that you had to overcome. Was that one of your challenges in life? Did you ever feel like, you're at a party and everybody's talking about what they do? Did you ever feel like, you didn't want to say, I'm a stripper, or...
Right.
Was it, because you just own it so fully now and it's incorporated into your business.
During the 1990s, it was in Seattle, and this was the heyday of grunge and everything that was cool on the planet. So the fact that I was a stripper was like no big deal. And that was the crowd I ran with. I ran in like the movers and shakers of Seattle, and everything was
very rock and roll.
It was very rock and roll.
Yeah.
And even though I wasn't a grunge girl, it was still like all the alternative people everybody hung out with everybody. And so it wasn't a big deal. Like I had, tons of friends who were strippers, and my teachers, again, like being young and being in Seattle, it's not exactly the most conservative place on the planet. So I didn't hide it, but, like my parents didn't know. I told them about, I think, the 5th year in. And they lived in Minnesota, so they had no idea.
And they're amazing. They're so much a part of your story too. I mean, they're very supportive people. It seems.
Yeah, now they're amazing. They've always been very supportive of me. But when I stopped dancing, it wasn't something that I put on my resume.
Right.
And that didn't work for me because I am somebody who has said I will never get a job having a resume. And that has always been the truth. I've always said, resumes just don't work for me at all. And so I really struggled with career focus because, again, I'm so multi-passionate. I have so many ideas about so many things, and everything from yoga to having a dress company to business coaching, and I can concept ideas super, super fast. So one of my biggest challenges, I'm always outgrowing myself. Usually within every 6 months, I'm outgrowing something. I'm on to the next, I'm on to the next, I'm on to the next. And so a lot of people would say to me, oh, you're so unfocused. And I would think that too, but it was a really tough time for me. So by the time I quit dancing, I had 2 college degrees. One was in women's studies with an emphasis on China studies because I was going to become an attorney. And the first one was my apparel design degree because that had been my dream since I was a child, was to be a fashion designer. But once I got my degree, again, I outgrew myself really fast, and I wanted to do business, and I wanted to do something else on the planet. And it didn't resonate with me. And I also realized that I'm not like a designer per se. I'm an arranger. I'm a businesswoman. And so I would have 3 design ideas. And then my classmates that are like, here's 50 designs I drew last night. And I was like, well, here's my 3. So I'm a better businesswoman than I am a fashion designer, although I have design aesthetics and ideas, and I love fashion. And so I really struggled. And by the time I quit dancing, I thought that I was going to go back into the fashion world. And again, with low self-esteem, not having connections, I had no network. Back then there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter. It was a waiting game for me, and that was tough for me. And then back in the 1990s, we're on the end of the dot-com bust, and then 9/11 happened. So everybody was like, we're not hiring. And I'm like, I'm running out of money. I've quit dancing. I'm selling everything I have, furniture, books, CDs, I'm walking dogs. I'm working for my friend, cutting ceramic tile on a diamond saw blade. I'm grouting tile in a kitchen. I'm
always the hustler.
So, right? I'm sewing buttons on I got a job working for some theaters in Seattle. But again, it was very low level things. And even though I could make anything, it was like, that's what they're hiring for. And
then
so
you got into real estate somehow.
So then I went into real estate, and I did have a lot of people helping me. I had a lot of support of people that were very, very generous with their time and money to help me. Where did you go? Oh, there you are.
I'm here. Sorry, my foot fell asleep. I didn't want to.
Where did she go?
I'm here drawing attention to myself while you were talking. I'm like, how can I very discreetly get this pillow under my ass?
So my dad at the time, I had a plane ticket back to Minneapolis that I'd purchased that summer because I would usually come home once a year. And my dad is, at the time, he had a very successful commercial roofing company. And we were sitting he has a warehouse, and we're sitting super not glamorous. Like really, it's like a boat shop. There's wood boats. There's machinery everywhere. It's huge. It's massive. My dad like collects stuff like you wouldn't believe. And we're sitting there, and he asks me, do you want to move back to, if you're willing to move back to Minneapolis, I will help you do that. And what I ask is for a year-long commitment from you. And a couple years before that, he had purchased a very large 70,000 square foot industrial warehouse building that was very run down and had made us kids partners on it. And that was going to be our inheritance.
Oh, cool.
You know, instead of cash, we're going to get an old beat up building. And so he said, I would like you to come back and work on this building. And I asked that you commit for a year, and I will help you move back. Because again, at this point, I seriously had $200 to my name.
Okay.
And I knew that I had to do something, but even it was really tough. But I knew that I had to really take the path of least resistance. And I was running out of money. My self-esteem was very low. I was very exhausted and very tired. So I said yes. And within 3 weeks, I was living back in Minnesota, living with my mom and working for my dad. So this is the woman. I moved out of my mom's house before I graduated high school. Fiercely independent, and this is what it came to.
Yeah, that's a big shift. That must have been like an ego kind of, I want to use the F word, the ego fuck. I don't know, a mind fuck. Like, how do you...
you know what? I was so worn down that I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I just did not care. So I came back to Minneapolis, and then within 3 months, I had outgrown myself. Like, I'd figured out how to use the fax machine. I'd figured out all of these things, and I went to my dad, and I said, because I'd been working in this building, and, you know, the first thing was like, okay, these are the people who haven't paid rent. Go get the rent money. And so, like, I was like, I can do this, Dad. And I remember he goes, well, write them a letter. And so I wrote this letter, and I showed it to him, and he said, you might want to soften that up a bit. And I was like, oh, sorry, Dad. I didn't go to the business writer school for ex-strippers. You know, my philosophy is like, you owe me money, pay up now, or that bouncer is going to knock the shit out of you.
I love that about you. I'm trying to like absorb some of that energy. I need more of that.
And so he's like, okay, here's how you do it. So I had to learn a lot. And after 3 months of collecting rents, and I realized, you know, there's so many gaps and loopholes in what was happening in the business. I found like all this money that we're losing and like tons of ways to save money. So as I kind of went through everything, I said, Dad, I'm bored and I need more than this. And so if we don't up the game, I'm going to have to leave because I can't take this anymore. I'm way too smart for this. I didn't spend 7 years in college to collect rent. And he said, okay, just don't go back to stripping. And he said, all right, let's do it. So we started looking at other buildings to purchase. And over the course of the last 10 years, we have purchased, I think, 10 buildings that have all been renovated. And up until just this last September, I was still a partner. I mean, I'm still a partner in the business, but I was actively involved.
Wow, that's so beautiful. You helped each other. Like, it seems like he lifted you up and then you lifted him up. I love that.
Yeah, and so it was great because, well, then 3 years into that, then I grew bored and started to get depressed because I had outgrown myself, and I thought, well, what's next? What's next? What can I do? And so I just started thinking about what would really excite me and inspire me. And again, this was a period of time where you couldn't just like Google a coach. It wasn't around. And I actually had done a coaching program when I was in Seattle right before I left. And that was my first experience with coaching, but it was a group format, and I really was looking for something one-on-one. And I went to a couple of different like career centers, business centers, and nobody could help me. So I just started expanding my vision and thinking about what I could do. And it started out with, I want to be a consultant. Well, because I love projects, and I thought, well, what can I consult on? I don't know. I've got 3 years of business experience, and I used to be a stripper. Like, who the hell is going to hire me? And then I just started, but I couldn't get away from that. And then my boyfriend at the time, we were in Prague. And I thought, well, I want a business where I can travel the world and have a laptop and make money. So that was another piece of it. And then I was watching the season premiere, first ever of The Apprentice.
Oh.
I watched how much they struggled on their show with the mindset pieces. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to work with entrepreneurs, and I want to help them fill in those gaps of the mindset piece, because I've been through so much in my life. I'm so strong. I'm so confident. I'm willing to do things that other people are not willing to do. And even though I'd only been in business for 3 years, I had a really high success rate. And that continued over the course of the 10 years that I stayed in the business. Even during the recession, we still maintain about, on average, a 98% occupancy rate, even though things were shifting so fast. But that really came from a mindset of I'm not going to let this bring our company down. We will prevail. And so I went to coaching school. I got my coaching certification, professional coaching certification. I started working with clients the first day of coaching school. And I just negotiated agreements with my father, who was my business partner, of this is what I have to do. My work will never suffer here. I will always keep these buildings full. And I need to go do these other things too. So, over the next few years, I worked my ass off. And during that time, I learned things about branding and marketing, and I've worked with some of the best mentors on the planet, and I've invested tens of thousands of dollars in my own education and getting help from other people. And then in 2008, the Daily Whip brand was born. And then, but really, it's not until this year that I've been able to. I didn't have the time or the bandwidth to promote it, and things are always shifting, and every 6 months there's going to be a new expansion or a new thing that I'm doing with it. And the stripper bit of that, it was, when I left Seattle, I was ready to leave that story behind me. So I didn't talk about it. To me, it was that's the past. I don't need to go there. It's not relevant to my life anymore. I'm not ashamed of it, but it's not necessary. I mean, there's a lot of things that I did in Seattle in the 1990s that I'll never say.
Let's talk about that.
Girlfriend talk. And but what I realized is that the kind of woman that I am, I'm a global empress. I want world domination, and I've always wanted that ever since I was a little girl. And
you and Madonna.
My mom. What?
I said you and Madonna.
Yeah, me and Madonna. My mom would say, Erika, come upstairs and learn how to cook dinner, so when you're married, you can cook for your husband.
Oh, yeah, I grew up like that.
What? That's silly. Why would I do that? And so the stripping piece, I knew that because I wanted a TV show. I wanted to do these bigger things with my business, and I knew that it was going to come out one way or the other. So I could tell my own story, and I could leverage that, and I could tell it in my way, or I could let someone else tell it in a very scandalous way.